Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. My name is Adam Manis.
My name is Peter Martin.
You're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
A bespoke podcast.
You gotta stop with the bespoke, buddy. Your family not told you that yet?
This podcast is a bespoke podcast about jazz. Explain.
Peter, if everything is bespoke, then nothing is bespoke.
No, but
and for the last 2 months, everything has been bespoke.
That is true. Well, you know what? Today's my big day, my big hurrah bespoke. This is the last day, so I want to go out in a flame of bespokenness.
This is going to be the most, and he's like, and it's going to be the most bespoke way to quit anything ever.
But you know what? Bespoke is an underrated term. Or is it overrated?
I like the way this is. That's a nice transition there. It is underrated. It is overused in the context of this podcast, but it's an underrated term. And that leads us into what we're talking about today, which are underrated albums from artists that you may know. So this comes to us from a listener. This is a speak pipe. You can always go to you'llhearit.com and leave us a message.
We're back on the pipe.
As we say.
We haven't been on the speak pipe
in a while. Let's hit the pipe, man. Sometimes we hit the pipe.
Yeah. Before we do that, we'll just remind you, you can go to You'll Hear It to leave us a question. People might be like, what are you talking about?
Literally just said that.
Oh, you did?
Just said go to
you'llhearit.com.
100% did.
Okay. What about you'llhearit.org?
Stay with me, Peter. Gotcha. Bespoke attention span.
There's a lot going on today. Yeah. Also, a little foreshadowing, more on this to come. Go to you'llhearit.com because we're going to be announcing a very special live event.
Yeah.
Can we even say what it is?
No, we can't yet. Why can't we?
Well, we're in charge of this thing.
I mean, we could if we wanted to.
Nervously looks over at producer. He's like, no.
We do have a live event coming up.
Oh, you just throwing it out there?
You just said it. You just said exactly.
Yeah, we have a live event coming up. So we're going to announce it here once everything's got a button on it. A little foreshadowing. It's likely going to be in a little place that rhymes with Fru Shork. No, it's not. That's the best I can come up with.
You say Fru Shork?
You know, like New York.
And you're a professional improviser.
That's
okay.
Okay. So anyway, more on that to come. Go to you'llhearit.com for all things You'll Hear It, and to leave a speak pipe as Thomas did. Let's take a gander, as we say in the biz.
Okay.
Hey guys, it's Thomas in Madison, Wisconsin. I play piano and trombone. First, just wanted to say thanks for sort of nudging me back into jazz piano. I do play a little bit, but had kind of drifted away in recent years. And I saw Adam's Kush Chords video. And besides being just really useful, it was fun and just sort of got me back into playing. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
My question for you guys, it seems fairly obvious, but when I search the archives, I don't find it. So maybe you haven't answered it yet in this format. And that is, what are some underrated, underappreciated jazz albums from the great players that you think just aren't talked about enough? And by the way, I don't mean like, hidden gems or bootlegs that almost nobody knows about or, no one can hear. No, I mean like albums that are out there in the world that anyone could go listen to right now that just maybe aren't appreciated enough. I can give an example. For me, it would be one would be the album Crescent by John Coltrane.
I overappreciate Crescent.
Honestly,
Yes,
one of my
you love
favorite
it.
albums of his. People talk about A Love Supreme, Giant Steps, my favorite things, but don't hear much about Crescent, and I think you should because it's a great album. What are some examples for you guys of albums by major artists that you could go?
Okay, we got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. This is okay. So this is such an interesting thing because we actually talk about Crescent a bunch, and sometimes we feel
one
like
of our faves.
Sometimes I feel like we over talk about it, but obviously not. And like, what makes a Coltrane album like Giant Steps kind of in the zeitgeist of greatest albums, but Crescent is not? And what makes it underappreciated or underrated?
Well, it's really interesting. So I picked so Crescent is a very similar style of album to A Love Supreme, right? Which is probably the more famous version,
Okay,
right?
right.
The spiritual masterpiece, right?
Right.
But Crescent is also a spiritual masterpiece. And
Right.
for a lot of people is the better version of the spirit, like is the most impactful version of that sound that group was getting around that time. I also picked another John Coltrane album that I think gets overshadowed by Giant Steps, which happened a few years before, but Coltrane's sound. You know the album Coltrane Sound?
Coltrane Sound.
Brad Meld, I was just talking about this album
That's what got me thinking about it.
on that interview with Rick Beato. He was talking about the opening track, "A Night Has a Thousand Eyes." But there are so many bangers on Coltrane Sound, and it might be my all-time favorite Coltrane album. So it starts with "A Night Has a Thousand Eyes," but there's Central Park West, Liberia, this amazing version of Body and Soul, Equinox, Satellite, which is How High the Moon with Coltrane changes. And then the last track, which is absolutely unbelievable. And that's what we're going to hear a little bit of, 26-2. Going through those keys in thirds. It's an absolute banger of an album. Another great track, Satellite. Pure vibe. I think, if Giant Steps is, the first time we hear the so-called Coltrane changes, Coltrane Sound, I think, is the best use of these like shifting tonal centers.
Yeah.
He used it to such great effect on this album. I love this album so much.
Maybe this is the ultimate of that sound. And
I think it might be.
And Giant Steps is more penultimate, if anything.
I think you're onto something here.
Yeah, no, that's great. And certainly underappreciated and underrated for sure.
Cool.
I was thinking about this, and I did a video called "The Real 10 Greatest Jazz Albums." Controversial because of its ridiculous title, I will admit. That was foisted upon me by the marketing department here at Open Studio. Actually, I came up with it myself.
You are the marketing.
No, but this whole thing, and we'll link to the video here, and then there's also a Spotify playlist over the video if you want to get into that. But it's basically underrated or underappreciated. Are those the same thing? I don't even know.
They're similar.
Yeah. Sometimes things are underappreciated because they're not, underrated almost makes it sound like it's been listened to, but it was given a low rating. So maybe that's a little bit of
underappreciated maybe mean it's like not as talked about.
Right.
But everybody
Still
who knows about it loves it.
Right, exactly. And I mean, for sure, Crescent is a great example of that over the years. It's always been such a big album to me, and I love your comparison to Love Supreme. I never thought about it like that. But that's how maybe an album becomes underrated or underappreciated, because there's another album that it's like this or that.
Right.
And then to people that go deep on this stuff and really study it and are like geeking out on this, we're going with both.
That's right.
But to a lot of people, it's kind of like,
Yeah, there's no bad John Coltrane album from this whole era,
right?
From this whole late 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, for his whole career, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's funny. Those two are not as talked about as Giant Steps and A Love Supreme.
Yep. But one of the ones, I don't know what you have pulled up over there if you want to play, but one of the ones from that 10 greatest jazz albums is Duke Ellington and Ray Brown. I think this one's underrated because a lot of people haven't heard it.
I haven't heard this one.
Yeah. And it's the record is called This One's for Bland. It's a tribute they did to Jimmy Bland, of course, the great bass player on Pablo. And it's kind of a weird thing because it's a duo record and it's like Duke Ellington and Ray Brown. And Duke Ellington, maybe not, especially from this period, as known for his piano playing, certainly not his solo or duo playing. He was a great player. I'm just going to put it out there.
And this record has a great vibe, too.
It's got a great vibe.
This
Check it
is
out.
Do Nothing Till You Hear From Me from this one's from Glenn. How good is that? Oh. Yeah. Nice. That's Do Nothing Till You Hear From Me from this one's from Blanton. That's Duke Ellington and Ray Brown. Of course, celebrating Duke's longtime bassist, Jimmy Blanton, an innovator on the instrument.
And what's funny about this being kind of underappreciated, underrated is that it's not like the Love Supreme thing where there's another duo album with Duke Ellington and Ray, or maybe there is, I don't know of it, that overshadows this. This is already such a unique thing, for those two to come together
For sure.
in the duo format. So
another one from your video of your real top 10 greatest jazz albums that I thought of would be a great addition to this list too of underrated, underappreciated albums is, when people think about Bill Evans, they usually think about, his work on Kind of Blue with Miles Davis. They think about albums like Sunday at the Village Vanguard, Portrait in Jazz, Waltz for Debbie. But I don't hear as many people talking about Interplay. I hear you talking about Interplay.
I love this record.
But this is Interplay from Bill Evans. Check it out. It's Freddie Hubbard, Percy Heath, Jim Hall, and Philly Joe Jones. One of the great covers, too, of its era. Very young Freddie Hubbard.
Yeah. And definitely the shadow of Miles Davis because of his association with all these musicians. But then a young Freddie Hubbard on the come up, as we say. Got that harmony in.
How great is that? It's such a good sounding record too, man. Jim Hall.
Yeah.
What a player.
Great Bill Evans comping on here behind everybody. It's a cool record and definitely underrated.
Another one that I want to add to the list, Peter, is, one of our favorite pianists is McCoy Tyner. When you think of McCoy Tyner, you think of, what do you think of? You think of Reaching Forth.
Right.
You might think of
I put that one as an underrated. Is that one out there?
McCoy. Real McCoy is the big one.
Yeah.
Right. There's a ton of the early stuff too that might be underrated, but this one is one that people don't talk about enough, in my opinion. I actually think this is, for me, I like this more than Real McCoy. This is Time for Tyner. It starts with this beautiful tune, African Village.
Yep.
The sound of this album is amazing. The Blue Note record, 1969.
Polyrhythms. Two different times going on. Is McCoy on this record? Welcome in.
It's a great version of I Didn't Know What Time It Was on this album, too. So good, man.
Bobby Hutcherson?
Bobby Hutcherson, Herbie Laws on the bass. Herbie Lewis on the bass. Freddie Waits on
Freddie
drums.
Waits.
Excuse me. How great is that?
Yeah.
Just vibe.
Man, I
for
used to have
days.
this LP. I just remembered.
I still have this LP.
Nice.
Yeah, this is a regular on my turntable at home.
Yeah, and this is like kind of foreshadowing a great period for McCoy. I was thinking about Trident.
Yep.
That album could have been, which was quite a bit later, but
10 years later, Super Trios.
yeah. What a great. I mean, when all that like real jazz died in the 70s, I'm like McCoy Tyner,
Yo.
hello, and a lot of others. But
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
McCoy was
your Duke Ray Brown album too.
great stuff happening in there.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
All right, we got one more here, and this is back to your video for the 10 real greatest jazz album of all time.
Ooh.
This is a little more recent. This is from the Roy Hargrove Quintet. Wait, no, this isn't on your video.
No, I have Roy on there.
You have Roy,
we
but
could
it's
do
not
that
this
one,
one.
but I think this one's even better.
This is from an album that I don't know of.
Because it's underrated.
It's underrated. It's called The Vibe.
unheralded. The Vibe. This was such an important record, I think. This was from like 93, 92, something like that, maybe even a little earlier. And it's, with his, what I would say is like one of Roy's first great quintets. Greg Hutchinson on drums, friend of the pod. Rodney Whitaker on
of the
bass.
pod, yeah.
Mark Carey. Like this was right at sort of the apex of their early relationship of great compositions between Mark Carey and Roy Hargrove. A lot of Carey compositions on here. And Antonio Hart on saxophone. And then there was some great guests and stuff. I don't know which track do you have pulled up. You can play anything.
I've got a cool James Williams tune pulled up called Alter Ego.
And I think this one's underrated because this was so influential on young players, like just a little bit younger. I mean, this is like Roy was, 22, 23, 24, something like that. Everybody was young then.
Yeah, you probably heard Alter Ego before. Check this out.
Yeah.
It's a great tune.
Yeah, Roy and Antonio had that hookup with the melody.
It's a vibe, right?
Yeah.
It's Mark Carey on piano, Hutch on drums.
Yeah.
Rodney Whitaker on bass.
Wait, there's two saxophones in there?
Yeah.
I know there was a couple, they had guests like David Fathead Newman, Branford.
Yeah, I don't.
Maybe it's Branford on there. I heard them play this live so much with Antonio. That's a little three voices there.
It's a Blakey tune, right? Like it was on a Blakey album?
Yeah.
It was a Blakey album?
Yep.
That was by
Yeah,
James
it's three
Williams,
voices.
of course.
Yeah, that's tenor solo. So
That's not Branford, though, is it?
that must be Fathead Newman. Yeah, David Newman.
Yeah.
92. Okay, it was 1992. It's a fun record.
Here's
There was another record.
Jules Stein song, The Things We Did Last Summer.
Oh yeah, there was another
this one?
record right around this time. They did a live record with the same band. This was great. Mark Carey. Oh yeah. Greg Hutchinson's brushes. Is he was he a master already at age
Could you
21?
not listen to Hutch and Roy Hargrove play ballads all day long?
I know, totally. That's some good coffee house jazz music right there, my friend. Mark Carey.
Man, it's so beyond coffee house jazz.
I know. I was just dangling out there to see if you were gonna snap at it.
You knew
You're
I
a
was
little
reading
slow
the
today,
Wikipedia,
man.
so you were
Sorry, I
like,
don't
is
want to
Adam
interrupt.
paying attention?
I don't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
We'll get to that next time. Until then.
You'll hear it.
call.